Alright guys, welcome back to another short video from MBMRC. This is Brian. Before we get too far into today's video, as always, I'm going to ask you guys to like and subscribe. I know that the title says doing a foam core wing.
Yeah, it's a little bit.
This footage here is just some stuff that I had laying around for the intro. This is probably going to be the most in-depth video on the internet on how to do foam core wings. There's even stuff in here doing landing gear blocks. So, you know, I know that there's been a few people that have asked for this. It's going to be long. It's going to be lengthy. If you wish, I can put in the description below, you know, like at this time he does the sheeting. At this time he does the landing gear blocks or, you know, whatever. But, yeah, this was filmed in about 24 hours. So this is about 24 hours from start to finish here. So hopefully you guys enjoy the video. Please, you know, talk to us down in the comments. We always love seeing those. And, yeah, hopefully you have a great rest of your weekend. Thanks.
Okay, today we're going to show a little bit about how we make a foam core wing. And, you know, everybody's got their way of doing it. And everybody, you know, it's okay. However you do it works out. But this is how we do them. This is a core I've already cut out. We're building the Chuck Cunningham Miss Bikini. And where I would start with this is making my template for the foam core. And what I do is use a piece of tracing paper. He actually shows on the plan, he shows here a foam rib section. I chose not to use that because I like to know where the wing root actually is, which is, I want to trace this out. I would have that as my leading edge stop point. And then I would make this a 1/16 of an inch smaller to accommodate the sheeting. And this is just kind of roughing it in. Then I would do the same thing on the tail. Then I end up with a template that looks like this. And you can see on my template, that's where the wing, the foam will actually be. This portion gives me an area for the wire to ride out on, both front and back. So you can see the back. And yeah, and obviously you make two. I like to put arrows on them so I can show which sides are up. And since it's a Hershey bar wing, it's very simple to just screw them on and do it. This is the bow that we use. It's just made out of hardwood. It's got a bolt that goes through each piece, and obviously it pivots there. Our wire is connected up down here just like that. And it's a piece of MIG wire, 035. A lot of guys use nichrome wire, and it's not necessary. I have nichrome wire. I actually prefer the MIG wire. It's a little more rigid. We just simply hook that up to a battery charger, and the battery charger is running on 6 volts low, or actually 6 volt high, which on any charger, anytime you're doing this, you need to play with the settings. You do not want to get the wire too hot. If you get the wire too hot, all it's going to do is snap on you. If you get it at the right temperature, this wire here is 35 inches long. 6 volt high works perfect on it. It does not get too hot, because a lot of times you can get halfway through a core and that wire snaps and you just ruined a core. So I put a piece of a bungee cord across the top to hold tension on it. And that's really all there is to it. You turn it on and you burn the core. So we're going to do one here in a second, and then after that I'll sand the cores and I'll show how I put them together. Okay, now we're going to cut the actual wing core. And what I'm going to do is, you can see I have my template on here. I wanted to make sure both of these are even with each other, and they're in actually with drywall screws. So we're going to go ahead and turn on the charger. And I always have Matthew assist me in this. The charger is on, 6 volts low. I can feel it through the handles. And you want to keep the wire as even as you can with the outside of the ribs. Do not push down, do not pull up. And you can see it's just gliding right through. You want to try and keep it even. You don't want to push down. You want to try, like I said, to keep that wire dead even with the edges of the ribs, or the templates. Just burning right through it, just nice and easy. And again, you don't want it too hot. This is about the speed you want to take it through. when I get to the end, I do not want to pull the wire off the end. What I want to do is stop. The middle of the wire sags behind the ends. So what I do is when I get to the end, I stop, just like that, and hold it there and let the wire come through the rest of the way. Just hold it right there and the middle will pop, just like that. Okay, now we're ready to flip that over. We leave the blank on the back side of it. Wire's still hot. We go from the leading edge to the trailing edge. Again, just keeping that wire nice and even. And the other thing is, if you don't have it too hot, you don't have a lot of smell. You can't really, a lot of times when you burn foam or cut foam, you can smell it. And this is really, at the right temperature, you don't really smell it. It doesn't really make an odor. You just don't want to get in a hurry with it and pull too much. Okay, stop again at the end. Let the middle just pop itself out. Voila! There's a foam core ready to be sanded. Get off your charger. And you can see that's a beautiful core. It's all ready for sanding. And the next part will be actually installing the sheeting and leading and trailing edges. So that's all there is to it. You just unscrew your templates. And as I said, it's easy. You can see it's absolutely a perfect shape. It just needs a light sanding. And we use blue foam on this. White foam cuts a little different, but this is what we had at our big box hardware store. So you can see the trailing edge is pretty much nice and even. Very, very good. So next part, we'll sand it. Okay, the cores have all been sanded and blown off with the blower, and then I vacuum them. You can see what they kind of look like, all sanded up. And it's basically just to get the fuzz off of them. And I went ahead and mocked one up and built it. And again, this is the Miss Bikini. And you can see, very nice profile. You can see the leading edge is nice and straight. Trailing edge is nice and straight. And this is ready to have landing gear and the servo bay made for it, which we'll do here in a bit. But I want to go ahead and build one here with you so you can see exactly how I do it. We'll set this one aside. First of all, I'm going to use a hot glue gun. And this is the glue sticks I use. When this stuff dries up, it actually is about as hard as epoxy. It's they're very hard, and they're also a little opaque. You can see that you can't see through them. So at any rate, we're going to go ahead and get started with actually doing a wing panel. I've got all my wood all pre-cut. I'm going to start off with the trailing edge and put my trailing edge piece on. And it's just as simple as taking the glue gun and laying a bead of glue right down the trailing edge. Just like that. And I'm going to take that and kind of wiggle it around a little bit so that it kind of really, it'll melt into the foam just a little bit. And to be safe, if you're using white foam, you may want to test some of the scrap blanks to see if the glue gun might be too hot. You might need to go to a glue gun with a little lower temperature setting. Or you can put the glue on the piece of wood itself and allow it to cool a little bit before doing it. Now next, I'm going to add, I'm going with a 1 inch wide. This is actually a 3/4 inch piece, but I'm going 1 inch wide so that my sheeting has something to butt up against when I sheet the top. And you'll see that in a second. But I'm going to go ahead And I'm going to lay a bead right down the middle of this. And I don't want to go too far out to the edge because it'll squeeze out. And then it makes it really hard to sand it because the glue will get gooey in the sandpaper. So just holding that in place. And that's the leading and trailing edges on. Now what I'm going to do, since I'm going to do this, leading edge piece is going to be a 1/2 inch wide. I'm going to take, my next piece is 3/4 of an inch. I'm just going to take CA on this. I'm going to go right down it like this. Put a nice healthy bead of glue right on this piece. And I'm just going to eyeball and center it right in the middle of my 1-inch piece. These cores are 22¼ inch long. The wing is going to be, when it's done, 45 inches. So it'll have 1/4 inch tips on it. And that'll make it come out to exactly 45 inches. So now my leading and trailing edges are in place. Next step I need to do is one more sanding step, which is I need to sand this trailing edge so that it contours to this airfoil. So I'm going to go out and I'll use my tri-sander. I do this on the porch, keep the dust down. I'll sand this with my tri-sander and then I'll block it out. And then we'll do the sheeting. That'll be the next step. Okay, we're back. I just got done sanding the trailing edge, and you can see it makes it into a very nice trailing edge stock. You can see the taper of it, and you can see my blocks up on the front, and I went ahead and flushed those off. Show the other end, and you can see how that piece kind of tapers. It makes a little piece of trailing edge stock. So anyway, now we're ready to start sheeting. I'll go ahead and I'll sheet the trailing edge first. And what I like to do is lay it out right at top of the piece. It goes right to the back edge of that wood. And I like to just take a pencil and make a line across it. That way I know where I need to stop my glue. And I'll just take CA, balsa to balsa. And again, CA, you can get foam safe CA. And the thing of it is, it's kind of expensive. And I don't think it holds as well as using the glue gun. So we'll just go right down the middle of this and put a generous bead of this glue. And I'll just take this, I'm going to kind of lay it on there. Like I say, I want to kind of wiggle it in a little bit and press it down. And it gets a little warm. Not bad. You just kind of hold it there for a couple seconds. It will adhere pretty quick. Okay, so that trailing edge piece is on there. And we're ready to start with the leading edge sheeting. And the leading edge sheeting, I'm not going to glue this edge up here with CA because it will eat the glue. What I'm going to do is go back later and I'll show you in the video. I fill this seam in the end with wood glue. But for right now, I'm just tucking that in there as tight as I can get it. And I'll roll that around. And again, I'll make a pencil line kind of right down the wing. Just like that. I'm going to come up here and I want to make sure that it's glued good at that edge. I'm going to go down here. I'm staying about a 1/4 inch or so away from each edge. I want to make sure I've got it there. And again, if you get too much up on that leading edge, it will gum the paper up. It makes it hard to sand. Let that set just a second. And we'll take this and we'll just put that right into place. And I'm going to push it into my pieces I have in the front. I'm just going to kind of work it like that. Just kind of push it down into that foam. You can feel it nice and warm on your hands. And that piece is basically, at this point, it's on there. And like I say, I've used Southerns and all kinds of other products in the past to put sheeting onto the balsa. And they worked, but none of them had good, real good adhesion over time. And this stuff here, it just doesn't come off. So that side is done. Come out nice. We'll flip it over, rinse and repeat, and do the same thing on the other side. Okay, now I've got the top and bottom sheeting on, leading and trailing edge. And again, if you were building this plane, this piece of sheeting is 1/16 by 2 inches, and this is 1/16 by 1 inch. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and lay out for my cap strips. And I just use this simple little square, and I just go right down here. I'm running 2-inch centers, so I have one right on the end, and I'll go 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, and I'll leave that right there and go 2, 4, and 6 is where my sheeting will start. And I flip the square over and go right down here, and I just do the same thing. Just put a little line, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 2, 4, and 6 is where my sheeting will start. Okay, so that's all laid out for cap strips. I've got all my cap strips all pre-cut. I need my X-Acto knife. I'm going to show you how I do cap strips. I find this is probably the most efficient way of doing them. I just lay it in there, press it against the leading edge, lay it against the trailing edge, take an X-Acto knife, score, bend, and push it down in. Go to the next one. And it's basically walking right down through there. You know, my 2-inch marks, bend, snap. I want those to fit kind of tight. When we're all done, we'll flush sand those, make sure they're all nice and even. And what this does is it gives it, one, it gives it some strength, and 2, it gives the appearance that it was a build-up wing, even though you and I know that it wasn't. This is kind of how I've done them for years. You can see I'm just cutting all those right in there as I go. And I just kind of leave them set there until I'm ready to go. And again, this glue that I'm using is when it really gets dried up good, or it just stays, it gets like epoxy. It's almost kind of unreal. It's very hard, which is good. These cap strips were made from a couple pieces of cut off sheeting from the trailing edge. Okay, that's all the further I need to go with that. Now for the glue on. And it's just as simple as just putting just a little bead right down the edge of it. And you just take one at a time, put it in place, push it down, get underneath the sheeting like that. It comes out nice and flush to the edge. Nothing really hard about this, it really isn't. Every now and then you might let out an ouch. You might hit your finger on some hot glue, but not a big deal. Now I just center those up with each pencil mark that I have. And I just, when I put my bead of glue on, I just kind of go right down. If you prefer to put it on the wood and stick it on, that's fine too. I just end up burning myself more that way. But you can see this is not very time consuming. Yeah, a lot of people ask, they'll say, how do you guys get these things done so fast? It's just years of experience of doing it. We don't build scale. You know, we build sport planes. We enjoy flying sport. We like trying different planes. We like old planes, new planes. And we've done so many that you learn little tricks along the way. And this is one of my tricks for doing foam cores. I've never had any problem with this. In fact, I crashed one of my Bill Evans planes that had one of these wings on it that was done with the hot glue gun, and I wanted to see just how tough the wing really was. And I took the thing and was trying to peel the balsa wood off, and you just couldn't get it off. And the only problem with a hot glue gun is sometimes dealing with the strings that it makes, but they all come off. So there's all my cap strips done on one side. And now we move on to the center sheeting. And to do center sheeting and do it nice, again, there's my line left over. That'll give me the 2-inch center back over to here. All I do is I mark each edge as to where it goes. And I like to put a little line across it so I know that that's where it goes. So then I'll take my square and I just simply lay the square out right where those lines are. And take an X-Acto knife, make a couple light cuts across it, and snap. And again, line up my line that I put on there, and I'll go over here, and I'll go here. Now I know where my glue goes. Just go like this. Now all these seams, like through here and that, we're gonna seal with wood glue when we're done. And it just gives you a little added strength in those areas. So now I'm gonna take this, kind of wiggle it around, line my line up that I put on it. And you can see the little line right there that I scored in it. Okay, that's one piece of sheeting. Okay, this one here will almost fit. So I'm gonna do the same thing. I like to trim it off. First, I'll put a line there, put a line there, come up here, and just cut that off. Now that I got that, and you know, it's good to have a little bit hanging over the end. You're going to trim it off anyway. And that looks pretty decent. I'm going to make a mark here at the back of the trailing edge sheeting. I'm going to put another mark right out here. And that's what needs trimmed off. Get my square again. Lay it out. And trim off that bit of excess. I always like to have them just a little bit long and then block them in. This one here just happened to fit perfect. That's because the camera's on. But it fits right in there. So now what we'll do is we'll just go like this. I got that a little close to that one edge, but you'll have that. Bring that edge right out to there. And that is a professional sheeting job. And again, this will all get flushed here in the middle. You can see there's a ton of excess hanging over the edge. That'll all get sanded flush. And you can see the seams are very nice. Those will sand out extremely nice. And we've got one side done. Really wasn't that difficult. So I'll do the other side and then we'll go from there. Okay, we've got both sides completed now with cap strips and center section sheeting. I'm going to do something in the building that I do not typically do. I'm going to show how I shape the leading edge. I don't like to make this kind of mess in here. I use this Master Air screw, little planer. It works absolutely fantastic. I've tried various kinds. This one seems to do the best. I just kind of start bringing it down to the sheeting. Just kind of work that edge down to getting it flush to the sheeting. Kind of in an angled way, kind of like a leading edge would be. You don't want to go too far and hit the sheeting. I've done it enough times that I kind of know where I'm at. But if you're not experienced with it, just take your time. And I'm just kind of rounding that edge over. You can see it's starting to take shape. Yes, it makes a little bit of a mess. And I find this is a lot easier than sanding for hours. Then I'm just going to flip it over to this side and kind of do the same thing. This is a fully symmetrical wing. So both sides get shaped sort of the same way. Okay, now I've got pretty much a roughed in shape. You can see that. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go out on my porch, because I definitely am not doing this in here, but I'm going to shape this a little bit more with my tri-sander, and then I will block it to get this shape here. So I'm gonna go ahead and go out and finish shaping that, and then we're going to take a look at it and go from there. Thanks. Okay, now I've got both panels complete. This is the last one I did. You can see the shaping came out just fine. Again, I used a little cordless tri-sander on it, and then I use a block, and they match up perfectly. And when I did the dihedral on this, I pre-cut it at the table saw when I cut the blanks out to make the cores. And you can do that, or you can cut it out later. But it's supposed to have an inch each side, so one side should be 2. So there is a perfect match. Tomorrow we will install the landing gear blocks in the bottom. I'll show you how to cut those out and put them in, and also the servo wells. So before I go to bed for this evening, what I'll do is I'll take a little bit of wood glue and I go right down the seam. As I told you at the beginning of the video, that I like to just put a bead down there, across those and across there, just like that. And I just take my finger, you can wear rubber gloves or whatever you want, and I press it into that seam. Even though you can't really see a seam there, this definitely helps reinforce that. I just kind of really press it in good. off the excess with a rag. Makes it easier to sand the next day. Yeah, I did both of these panels here, I don't know, from the time I cut the cores out, I probably got about 3-4 hours in it. And that's cutting all the wood and everything that it took to do it, including the aileron stock. That was all cut out. And flip. As I say, rinse and repeat. A little bead, bead. And press it into that crack. You can actually feel the wood kind of press down when you do it. So you know you're getting it in it. And that'll be ready tomorrow to work with. And there it is. It's ready to dry, and they said tomorrow we'll put the landing gear in servo wells and we'll join it, put wing tips on it, glass the center section, and it will be done. So that's it for today. Okay folks, now we're in the process of making the landing gear, and this is made out of 5/32 music wire, and I'm about to show how we do the landing gear. I've tried various benders and all kinds of different things to do this, and I've come up with this method. Put it in the vise. I have my vise pre-marked. I got it marked at 7/8, which is where I'm going to make my first bend. Making the gear identical to each other is the hard part. So what I'm going to do is I have my vise marked so I know where each bend was made. I'm going to lay the end of the torch right up against the vise. Yes, the vise will absorb some heat. It acts as a heat sink, but it also gives me an accurate bend because I have something to put this against. Some people say, well, that'll make the gear weak. I've done it this way for a very long time. I've had no problem with my gear. So I'm just going to hold that there. Keep the torch back a little bit, you get more heat at the end of the blue tips. I'm just going to hold that. I don't want to get the thing cherry red. Once you see it starting to get a little red glaze to it, just like it is right now, go ahead and bend. Get your 90 degrees in there, and that much is bent. Now, I have a rag that's been dipped in a little water, and I cool that a little bit. And again, we'll be able to adjust this gear once it's all made. And there is going to be a right and left gear. I'm going to show how we fit it to the block. Okay, so our first bend is made, and it's a nice 90-degree bend. So next, I'm going to bend the other direction. And on this, I have my end of this about 3/8 of an inch out. And it'll be the opposite bend, what we just made. So I'll be pushing it forward this way. I try to keep that as level as possible. Again, hold it right against the edge of the vise. Actually, making wire gear is a lot easier than what people think. If you use benders, it can be difficult to get the bend in the exact same spot every time. This method here, pretty much spot on every time. Just starting to get red. And again, 90 degrees. And again, that's really hot. So we're going to cool it down a little bit. Don't want to cool it too quick. This is spring steel. So you can take the, well, it does take the temper out of it. Could you put some more water on this for me, please? I'm filming right now. And you can see that is our next bend. So we have that piece looking like that. Next, my next bend is going to be the bend out for the wheel. And I'm going to put that in the vise, and I'm actually using the full width of the vise, which makes it really easy. I'm going to bend out for the wheel. And again, at the end of this, what we need to do is adjust the gear so that both are nice and equal and have the same rake on them. And there will be a right and left. Again, you can see I'm not getting that cherry red. I'm just getting it to the point I can just start to see it getting a little red, and I've been. And yes, I do realize, folks, that that does take the temper out of the spring steel. I could quench it in oil, I guess, but just using water, cooling it down a little bit. I've never had any problem with our gear bending. So whatever temper it does take out, it's okay. Okay, now, this should match up with the set I've already made. If I put that up against there, look at that, the bends are exactly in the same places. Right on. So now, I need to cut off my axle dimension. And I'm going to lay that on there because I've already measured this to a wheel. You want to put a wheel and a collar and another collar on there so you can see. Just using a pencil, a marker would probably work better. And I'm going to put this in the vise, just like that. And you can use a Dremel for this. You can use, you know, any type of cutoff wheel. I'm using a little angle grinder. And that's all there is to that. Now I'm going to deburr it real quick. That is our axle portion. Now this upper part is a little bit long for the block. So if we look at the landing gear block I've made, you can see that protrudes through it quite a ways. So what I want to do is grind down just a little bit of that so it doesn't stick through the wing. And there we have it, two identical landing gears. Now what I want to do is I want to get the rake of these exactly the same. Matthew, could you come here and tighten this vise? Since we have a right and a left, tighten it more. I want these to be exactly even. I'm gonna grab that, bend it, so I can look down that and see those are both exactly the same. This one's got a little tweak out to one side. And there you have it. Two identical landing gears, both exactly the same height. And I'm trying to get there, we go. And we have a right and a left. Now, Matthew, could you go over and grab my drill off my bench? I'm going to show you how we drill the landing gear block. You can see this landing gear block I've made myself. It's made out of hardwood. You can buy these pre-made. SIG has them, if you can still get them. And you can see I just cut the end of it off to add the block to the actual landing gear block. It gives a good rigid support for the wire. And I make sure that this groove lines up with the groove in the bottom. We're going to go ahead and drill a hole through that pretty much in the center. And hopefully, and those parts there need to be epoxied together. So I'm going to go about in the center there. And with this pole here, you want to give it a little ream in each direction. You want that to slide in pretty easy. That's a 5/32 bit. I also like to take the bit and just go down through the channel of that, make sure it's exactly 5/32. Now the next step I'm going to do is one that I've learned over the years, since this has a radius to it. You can see the radius. The landing gear block was drilled, it's square. So what I want to do, I want to put my landing gear block back in the vise, and I want to take the drill and drill in an angle right into my next hole. Just go like that, and that'll make a radius in the block, because we want that landing gear to fit in there real nice. And if you don't do that step, the landing gear will not fit in it real nice. So I'll pre-fit this, kind of see how it goes in it. And look at that, it's a beautiful fit. And you can see that acts as a torque block. Once that's got the bands on it, it's very strong. So that's pretty much a really good fit. Sometimes these can be a little tricky to get back out. You just gotta kind of work them a little bit. What I'm gonna do with that, so I'm gonna give it a little bit more of a ream. Kind of go like this, wiggle it around on the bit, a bit like that. It was a little tight in there, which is good. Now it slides in much easier. That's it. So now we know that we've got a good fit. And that's how you do a landing gear block. You can see that protrudes a little bit. You could grind that off because this portion of it is really doing nothing. So at any rate, that's what a landing gear block looks like with the landing gear in it. And I like to pre-fit all this before it goes in the wing. So the next step is we'll show you how we do this, put it in the wing. Okay, here we are back. I have one panel already done. Landing gear installed and the servo well. The hole drilled for the lead. Tilted a little bit, you can see it. See my little top spot where the servo lead will come through. And we're going to show you how to do all that. I have already pre-marked exactly where this landing gear goes. I use the actual landing gear block to trace around so that everything comes out exactly the same. So what I do now is I cut the sheeting off and I just simply score right down my pencil line, making a nice light score. So I want this to fit as tight as I can. If you end up with a gap, it's okay because you're going to end up, you can fill that with wood glue or epoxy. Now I'm going to take that, I'm going to go deep and go the full length of my X-Acto knife blade, because it's not going to hurt a thing. We're going to dig all that out anyway. You hit that glue, it's hard to go through. Okay, now for the ends, you stick that in, make it nice and square, and just kind of use a little bit of a sawing motion. Okay. Now what I like to do is just take the knife and kind of go down through the middle, put some score lines through that sheeting. Makes it easier to get off. You may want to take a little screwdriver and see that stuff, it's stuck down pretty good. And you just want to pick that out. See, hopefully. All right, now that should match up with our landing gear block, and it does perfectly. Okay, now the next step is to dig the foam out of this. So what I like to do for this is just, again, score back through the foam. And I want to get the depth of this so that this landing gear block sticks up about 3/32 of an inch. And I'll show you why. So now I just want to go through this and put some score lines in it. Like that. And when you do this, I like to have this handy. I've got a little car vac because this gets a little messy. And I just take my knife and I start digging the foam out. Just picking it away with the X-Acto knife. And actually, in a foam core wing, this is probably the most time-consuming part of it, is doing this. I just use the tip and kind of just lightly hit that. And I'm just kind of judging by eye how deep I actually am. So then I'll take this. Keeps the debris down. I just keep digging that out. So just taking that knife tip, and I'm just kind of going straight in and using the point of this to dig the foam. If you put enough score lines in it, it generally breaks apart relatively easy. And I just want to get that as even as I can. This part here is a very important part because holding that foam to that wood block for the landing gear is very important. You want as good a fit as you can possibly get. And we're going to actually show you how to make the foam stronger in a minute. I have a little process I do for making the foam quite a bit stronger where that landing gear block goes in. Okay, that's all dug out pretty even. going to take the block, put it in upside down, kind of push it in place, and I can see that I still got a little ways. Like I said, I want about 3/32 of an inch of that block sticking up. So I'm going to just lightly see where I'm at and just remove a little bit. And again, just kind of going like that. Fit. I am close enough for my likings. Okay, now I need to cut in where this block goes down. So what I like to do is kind of put the block in place, press on it a little bit, and I can see the indentation in the foam where that needs to go. So we need to cut that little square piece out separate so that that's got a nice pocket to go into. The tighter this fit, the better you are. And you can see that the car back works exceptionally well for this. Dug in there pretty good. I can see I need to widen that a little bit. Yeah, this is a part that you don't really want to mess up on. Okay, that fits down in there pretty decent. Now comes the part where we're actually going to harden the foam. I'm going to get all these little chips out of here. Want to make sure you're good and cleaned out. If you can make the foam hard, the epoxy sticks to it better. You don't have to do this process. You could actually, at this point, epoxy it in. But you would have to make sure you were good and flush. I like to take a soldering gun now and lightly melt the foam. This will make the foam extremely hard. So I just turn on my soldering gun. You could use a soldering pencil. You may want to have a fan or something blowing. I don't think this stuff is probably real good to breathe in. And you want to just cut down. And that foam, after it's melted like that, is extremely hard. I've had about 6 cups of coffee this morning, so I'm a little on the shaky side here. Okay, that foam is very hard on the sides and in the bottom. You can kind of see my channel. See if I can get it up there. You can see that channel in there. That foam is really hard and stiff, which is good because the epoxy and everything will stick to it better. You have more surface area. Now I'm going to trial fit my block, and look at that. They come out perfectly level to the sheeting, which is what you want. Any of these little gaps here, the epoxy is going to push through some of those, but we can also fill those with wood glue. So that is done and ready to be epoxied in. And you must use epoxy on this. You cannot use wood glue. This is very important that that is epoxied in. Next, we'll do the servo well. Okay, next we're ready for the servo wells. And the servo well looks like that right there. The servo fits in there nicely. You can see, I'll show how to drill the hole through the center and how to make this little servo exit hole. But first of all, I already have it pre-marked out. I use 2 little pieces of hardwood. They're about 1/8 of an inch thick, and the length of them is 1 1/8 inches. And that'll give me plenty of surface area to glue these in place. So since I already have everything marked out, standard servo is 1 5/8 inches apart. I'm going to go ahead and cut out where these blocks go. And again, lightly score. And I use the blocks to trace out where I want to be. Okay, that block should fit right in there. And it does, nice and tight. This hole here, we're not going to dig any foam out of it. And this here actually ended up being right on the seam line. When you're all done doing this, you want to take this and take like a tri-sander, and I'll show it, and make sure that this is all nice and flush to the leading edge. You should actually be able to run your fingers across it with your eyes closed and not feel it. That's when you know you got it right. Sometimes getting getting this stuff unglued is tough. The little screwdriver is usually in order. So that one fits in nice and tight, and that one fits in nice and tight. Now, with that done, pull those back out. And again, we do not want to dig the foam out of those areas. We're just going to leave those alone. I'll show you what we do with that. Now this is the width of our servo. And since we're cutting cross grain and going across glue, sometimes you have to use a little bit of a sawing motion. And again, you can go the full width of this X-Acto knife blade. You're not going to hurt a thing. Or full depth, rather. And again, lightly score. And I'm going to put a couple cross cuts in there, relief cuts, to make it easier to pull that off. All right, now that's all dug out. That's kind of what our servo well looks like, and we're going to cut this just like we did for the landing gear blocks. And again, leaving the portion in place where the rails go. Putting a lot of cuts in here makes it a lot easier to dig this foam out. And this foam here, you can actually dig down pretty deep, right off the rip. once you start getting too messy. You just gotta vacuum it out. I just keep taking that away. Getting in there pretty deep. I'm almost there. And if you see the sheeting on the other side, it's not going to hurt anything as long as you don't go through the sheeting. I'm not seeing any sheeting, but you can. You want that in there nice and deep. All right. Now the servo itself should fit in there. It does. See, on a servo you always have this little lead sticking out of the front of it. And since we're going to mount it in there with the lead coming out in that direction, I need to make a pocket in there for that to fit in so that it doesn't push that too tight against the servo. I want to make sure that there's a little loop in there. So when I drill the hole, I'm going to use a step bit with an extension on it, and that's what I'm going to use to go through the wing. But I'm going to mark the hole for that now. I'm going to go completely through the inside of this. I'm going to go completely through. The bit is actually going to go into the other side to some degree. So I am going to mark the hole using a pencil for my start. And it's pretty much right in line with that sheeting. I want that to go underneath just a little bit. So I take the pencil and I stick it in there. Now, I can't really show this step too good, but I'm going to go ahead and drill it. I'm going to sit it on the floor, keep the drill as straight as I can. Okay, now the bit is gone completely through, and you can see I've got a little pocket up inside of there for that lead to be in. And the foam is very thin where I'm going to epoxy that hardwood piece in. So you got to be careful that you don't damage that little lip. I don't know if we can see it too good, but at this point here, I'm going to go ahead and take the soldering pencil or soldering gun. Done with that, and I'm going to harden the foam up on the inside of this. Taking a nice place for that servo to set. Hardening that foam up. And you can see your channel up in there where that bit came through. Take the soldering gun and go back through it. Okay, now where these blocks go, I'm just going to take this and lightly go over it. And you got to watch you don't go too far, otherwise you just made junk. Okay, now that's all done. Fit our wood blocks in there. Boy, they fit pretty nice. That one there can go a shade deeper. Tight in that corner, and I can see the foam, so we just heat up just nice and light, and that's the key. And that, my friends, should do it. Oh yeah. You want that, if it sticks up a little bit, that's okay too, because again, we're gonna flush it. Now, that's done. There's our exit hole. Now we're gonna see how the servo fits. Take the lead, go right through our little hole. And make sure your lead goes in there all right. And the servo fits nice and tight. And you can see that's in there good. So those blocks and everything there are ready to be epoxied in. And again, folks, the tighter the fit, the better you are. So that foam is nice and hard. Those blocks are ready to be epoxied in, but now we're going to do the final touches. Before we do that, I'm going to line this up with this one. And I want to go about in the middle of that sheeting. Okay. Then I'm going to take a little Dremel. Rotary tool, I should say. Dremel's a brand name. And I'm just gonna take that. Wow. Now, that should line up with that. And again, we can touch that up. I'm going to stand that up, put the wing exactly where it needs to be, and I'm going to touch that hole up. So there we have it. Those panels, when they're epoxied together, that hole will line up just nice. And again, any further adjustments we'll make once the panels are joined. But like I said, this one here has been all done. This is flushed out. If I close my eyes, and it may not look like it in the camera, but if I close my eyes, I can't really even feel where those are at. So that panel is done. This panel, we're going to go ahead and epoxy these parts in, our two servo rails. And again, those have to be hardwood. These in this particular case, I believe that is, I think it's oak or ash, one or the other. But at either rate, I mean, you can use basswood, whatever. That's what I had. So I'm going to go ahead and epoxy those in. And I'm going to flush these off with my tri-sander. And just so you know, what I'm referring to as a tri-sander is this piece here. You could have a small one or whatever. This is a cordless one that I have, and it allows you to, you know, use the tip of it so that you're not gouging the balsa wood. You can use the tip just to go along those edges and get them flush to the balsa. So at any rate, that's our next step, and we'll be back with another part. Okay, we're back here. I just wanted to let you know I got this sanded. Anytime I used a tri-sander, I mean, I'm knocking down the big edges, but anytime you get done, you always want to block out your areas. And again, you should be able to close your eyes and not feel that seam. I did end up with a slight gap right there. You can see it. And I just filled it with wood glue. And with the wood glue I like to use for that is this Glue Max. And the reason I like it is it has wood fibers in it. So when it dries, I mean, you got all kinds of fibers going in all kinds of different directions, making it nice and strong. So that little gap is filled. All that is done. We are ready to join the wing panels, but I'm going to do a final fit. Here's my landing gear. Fits in there perfect. We're going to go ahead and stick this servo in there. And again, when you're assembling the plane, your little lead goes right through there. You'll pull it out. When you put this in, make sure that this thing is not bound up like that. If it has a twist in it, untwist it. Stick it in there with the wire end going to the front of the wing first, and it slides right in. And you can see that's a very nice fit. No gaps on the sides. You can see both sides of it there. Fits in there very nice. And the servo control arm will actually come off of this side and down, which actually is out further than the original torque rod would have been. So the other thing I like to do with these, and I've learned this the hard way, always make sure that the servo is not in the path of the wheel. One, if you're flying on a dewy morning or whatever, it just throws all the stuff right on that. And also, if you would buckle the landing gear back, it smashes into the servo. I've learned these things the hard way. So, without further ado, we're going to start the process of joining the wing. Okay, we're ready to join these wing halves, and the only thing I really want to show on this is that I take a pencil, and you can see I take a pencil and just poke holes all over this. I just take the tip of the pencil, poke it down in there. What this does is when I put the epoxy on this, it goes across those and into the next piece. Hopefully a couple holes line up, and it makes it really, really strong. And again, the next step will be glassing it, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do this to the other side. I'm going to apply my 5-minute epoxy to this. I'll hold it in place until it's dry, and the wing panels will be joined. Okay, the wing panel is joined together. You want to make sure you flush everything off and make sure it's nice and even. And today I'm going to use just standard drywall tape, fiberglass drywall tape. Very strong. I've used this on everything from quarter scales to you name it. Never separated a wing. I'm just going to take that tape, it's self-adhesive, and I'm going to center it up right in the middle of my seam. Cut it off. Cut it off. I'm going to fold a little flap on it, because if you don't do that, it's hard to unpeel it. Got to press that down real nice and even. Get it a little ways over the leading edge. And you want to make sure that the balsa wood is very clean before you put this on, because it's not going to stick good to dust. We're going right over our servo lead exit hole. So next thing I'm going to do is turn my fan on, like this. I have a little plastic bag that I'm going to put over my fingers, like that, so I don't get CA on them. Now I'm going to take this, and you know what? I'm going to get the big bottle out. I'm going to put a very generous amount of CA up top of this tape, like that. Now that that's on there, and you can see, hopefully, that is a pretty generous amount. And we're going to take the plastic bag on my fingers, and I am going to rub it into all the pore space on that tape. And if we go outside of it a little bit, that's what we want to do. And now that that is completely saturated, and you definitely want a fan running, blowing this away, because it will burn your eyes, your nose, your throat, anything you can think of. And I fold that over the edge, and I fold that over the edge, and while that's doing that, I get out my kicker and just spray that tape down. And that's it. Let it set a couple seconds. Let it defume. And that is a very, very strong center section. And very easily done. No fiberglass fraying. All nice and stiff. All right. We're going to repeat the same process on the bottom. I will trim off any excess here, and we'll trim that off, and we'll do the same exact thing on the bottom of the wing. Now we're going to add, we've got our center section done. I'm going to hold this down. Matthew's going to go ahead and drill where the dowel goes.
There we go.
Let me look and see. Yeah, that's it. Easy, don't push too hard. That will assure that it's in a great spot. That's a 1/4 inch dowel. And again, this piece must be epoxied in. Absolutely must be. So we put that in, we'll mark it, cut it, and epoxy it in. I don't know how well that can be seen, but this piece is a definite epoxy in. We'll go out to about right there. That's bottomed out. And that's it. We'll put a little taper on the edge of that with the sander and epoxy it in, and we're almost there. Okay, I've pretty much got the wing completed. I got the tips on it, which were nothing more than gluing some 1/4 inch sheets to it. I just trace it out, put the tips on it, put it on with hot glue. You can epoxy it if you like, but I also dimple the foam on that end as well. And now I'm cutting out the ailerons. You can see I added my trailing edge stock to it, and I have a piece of plywood where the wing bolts are going to go through so we don't crush the foam. And now I'm shaping the aileron stock that I made, and I use a little chamfer plane that's available. You can get them at Amazon or wherever, but I just lay that right in the corner, and I've got it set a little bit aggressive, so I'm going to back that off a little bit. And the key with these chamfer planes is to make little short bites, and that's not a short bite there. Just adjust it. There we go. With this, I'm going to kind of make a semi-hex shaped. Just work it on both sides. and you move it a little bit at a time, you end up with a shape like this. Can you see that good? See, he's kind of got a flat spot in the middle. That's how I like to do them. Anyway, that's what we're doing. We're just going to use the chamfer plane till we get it down to that shape. You just move it out a little bit at a time. Keep it clean. Pretty easy thing to use. When it gets to the point where it just skates across, it's time to drop it a little lower. It's got a little scale on the side of it, so you can see where you're at. Cut and we'll be ready to make a pretty big cut. And that's in it. It's pretty roughed in right there, you can see. Now all I'm going to do with that is lay it right here and go across it with the sanding block. Okay folks, here we are. We got a completed wing. The only thing that it needs at this point is final sanded. All the ailerons are in place, everything is done. The wing is nice and straight. The dihedral is exactly spot on. And that wasn't so hard, was it? Less than 24 hours, we have a perfect wing panel. The ailerons have good deflection both directions. Everything works well. And the beautiful part of this is while I'm doing that, building the wing, Matthew has the fuselage completed. We have the holes drilled for it. Everything's done. Elevator's made. Servos are all installed. Everything is pretty much done. Final sand and cover. And in less than 24 hours, we have a Miss Bikini. So, hope you enjoyed the video. Any questions, let us know. Here we are, folks. Sunday at about noon. The entire plane is done and covered. Matthew is finishing up the installation of the radio gear. We'll do kind of a full review of the plane here when it's completed. But yeah, everything is going together. He's finishing that up right at the moment. And our wing that we did, our foam core, there she is. You can look, hinge lines are all nice and straight. Everything looks really good on it. There's our lead exit hole. We'll flip it over, take a look at the bottom. Of course, you can see everything looks nice and straight. You can see how nice and flush the servos sit in there. You can see our landing gear we made. And we know what's inside of all that. And if you look at the wing, you see the cap strips, and you almost think that it was a build-up wing. But, like I said, you and I, we know better. So, that is the Miss Bikini wing. And it's completion.